This is Support is Sexy, episode 134, with Wendy Wollner, CEO of Balancing Life's Issues. Welcome to Support is Sexy. I'm your host, Elayne Fluker, entrepreneur, author, and founder of Chic Rebellion Media. 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, I interview inspiring women entrepreneurs who share their wins and their lessons to help you take your business and your life to the next level and create something sexy. Here we go. Hi, everyone. Welcome to a new episode of Support is Sexy. I'm so excited to have you here because you know it just would not be the same without you. And I have a question for you. Do you believe in work-life balance? Think about it. Do you believe it's possible? I've had this debate with a lot of friends who are entrepreneurs and friends who are not entrepreneurs, friends who are just living life. This debate about work-life balance. A lot of women that I know or that I speak to don't believe balance is possible, at least not in the sense of the word that we all understand it. I do believe it's possible. Call me an optimist, but I believe it's possible. Now, what it looks like is different for everybody. So today, I'm excited to talk to Wendy Wollner, whose company is called, listen to this, Balancing Life's Issues. And this isn't a new company that she founded because we're all talking about work-life balance now. Wendy has had this company for 30 years. She actually did her dissertation on work-life balance. So she is steeped in this philosophy that work-life balance is possible. And her business does corporate trainings with companies all around the world. And she has grown from covering 5 topics in the beginning to more than 300 topics around balance for employees at this point, teaching more than 15,000 sessions per year. So like I said, she's in it. Tons of great information in this episode. So I'm just going to tell you quickly what you'll learn and then we'll jump right into it. So Wendy talks about her own experience of what it's like to be the only woman CEO in the room, what her personal definition of mindfulness is, how to find balance between drive and ambition and being compassionate, which I thought was very powerful to discuss. How to handle it when people tell you to tone it down. I think that's very interesting, especially if you're a woman who feels like you need to turn it up because you're a woman or because people aren't taking you seriously. And Wendy talks about that. How to process feedback, how to fight fairly and have healthy conflict, 5 buckets of contentment, how to come to terms with poor decisions and mistakes we've made in the past. Wendy also gives us tips if you want to pitch your company for corporate trainings. She talks about the importance of laughter. I'm all for it. Why emotional intelligence is important and helps you find balance. Why sucking it up sucks. Also knowing the difference between the emotions you're feeling, like sad, despondent, fear, anxiety, overwhelm, all of the emotions, the importance of knowing the differences between them. The trouble with multitasking. In fact, think about it. In the past couple of seconds that I've been reading this list, how many things have you done in those past few seconds? Think about it. Wait till you hear Wendy talk about multitasking. Also, how to do resolutions right. I didn't know there was a right and a wrong way, but Wendy has some tips on how to get it right. Also, how to positively leverage your emotions. Her top 3 tips for finding balance and managing stress. Why rest is a game changer and quote unquote crushing it is a thing of the past. And why the idea that you don't have enough time is a convenient excuse. So tons of great advice in this episode. Be sure to go to supportissexypodcast.com so you can see a link to the resources that Wendy mentions in this episode. And without further ado, find your balance with Wendy Wollner. So Wendy, thank you so much for joining us on an episode of Support is Sexy. I'm excited to have you here.
My pleasure. I'm super psyched to be here too.
Excellent. Now, first question. When did you first fall in love with entrepreneurship?
Oh, my goodness. I probably when I was very little, but I didn't really know it because I always liked the idea of being in control. So as a matter of fact, I remember when I was in 6th grade, our teacher union went on strike and they asked a few kids to lead the class while the teachers were out. And I thought, wow, this is amazing. So that was the whopping age of, 11 years old. But fast forward, I really did actually a very traditional, I got married. I had 3 children. I was a school teacher. And truly it was my divorce. Simply really trying to control every aspect of my life, being a good mom, being a good worker, and entrepreneurship was the perfect solution to a difficult situation.
Now, where did you grow up?
I grew up in Westchester, New York, born and raised. I went to Woodlands High School, went to Syracuse undergrad and University of Pennsylvania grad school. So all kind of local in the tri-state area.
Mm-hmm. Now, what was Wendy like as a little girl? Obviously a leader if you jumped up to lead the class.
Yes, but really, truly, and I'm embarrassed to sort of say it because I'm not sure that I have 3 grown kids. I don't know that it's the right way. I was a good girl. I was the rule follower, the kind of kid who sat in the front row and asked the question when the bell rang. So you can imagine how popular I was in school, right?
Right.
But I loved learning, and I from a very early age on, I was fascinated with how much the more I knew I didn't know. So that really was installed very young. I was also very lucky to have incredible parents. And it's interesting because now I think even more so, that they didn't raise me with gender roles. So there was nothing, I have a brother, there was nothing that we were taught, like if we were doing leaves, boys and girls did that together. If we were doing money, we were doing it together. If we were fixing a car, we were doing it together. And I think about that a lot now that, I'm 54 years old, almost 55. That was pretty advanced, I think, of both my parents, but particularly my dad.
Right. And what do you think it was about them that made them very certain to make sure that you weren't confined by those gender roles? Or do you think they just didn't even think about it in that way? It was just, no, you can do it just like your brother.
No, I do. My parents are refugees. They're born in another country, kicked out of a country.
Which country?
And I think they were from Austria. Both my parents were born in Vienna, kicked out, obviously, when Hitler came to power. And I think what they learned firsthand was the one thing that no one can ever take from you is education and skills. And so I do think that there's a very strong message with that. No matter what, you always have an education to fall back on, and you have skill sets to fall back on. So nothing, in their world, terrible things happen. I certainly understand that, but nothing really bad. That is something that nobody can ever take from you. So I do think that firsthand experience of someone who's been the difference between, being a refugee and an immigrant is huge, right? People often confuse that. An immigrant wants to come here. They want to have a better life. That was not true for my family.
Right. And what do you think, at what point, rather, did you realize, as you mentioned, you sort of now as an adult are really starting to realize that there weren't any gender roles placed on you when you were younger, but was there a certain point when that kind of came to you, that realization? Yeah,
I think it's super hard to be a strong woman today. I certainly know you interview such amazing people, and I don't know their stories and how they feel, but I am very often the only woman in a room, the only woman CEO, and it's hard. It's challenging to find a balance between being driven and ambitious, which I am, and being seen in a way that's compassionate and empathetic, which I am too.
How do you handle it in those moments when you're the only woman in the room? Do you feel like there's an expectation on you to be a certain way, which is interesting because you weren't placed in those, as we said, those gender confined roles?
And that's the problem. So I go into it with this, yes, everyone's going to like me. Right. I'm going to be my best. And then people will give me the feedback about you need to tone it down, or you need to, why did you ask that? Or you shouldn't have done that. Or, you shouldn't have tried for that. And it's very disheartening. And I think, it's people should know how many meetings I can be very well behaved, but I will go home in tears or close to tears. I will go home feeling a little dejected, little insecure, and I really have to soul search about, how was I? What was I'm trying to be very self-aware. So I don't want to say that I always think I'm right in this situation, but what I can tell you is my questions or my comments in the meeting and my nature is to say I'm there to grow my business. That's my job. And these are networking meetings I'm mostly talking about, either sales meetings or networking meetings. And to gain that credibility, I feel like it's 10 times harder for me.
Wow. And then, so speaking about feedback, how do you handle it, or how do you suggest people handle it? Because feedback is great. Feedback is information, as they say, and we have to take it or leave it. But how do you decide what to take and leave? Like you said, sometimes things hurt. The feedback might be hurtful, or you might feel, dejected or anything like that. So what do you do in those moments when you're processing that feedback?
the first thing I really do is I look at a source. So I'm really looking at, is the person a value that's giving me the feedback, right? Mm-hmm. Do I value this person? Do I respect this person? And so that's a big foundation for me. Do I want to be this person when I grow up? Is there any redeeming qualities that this person has? Mm-hmm. So, and if the answer is yes, and most of the times it is, I say, great, what can I learn from it? And how do I change and flex without cracking my foundation? So I am a very outspoken, assertive woman. And I might make the bold comment to say that most of the contracts I have are with Fortune 500 clients. They're very difficult to negotiate. Certainly, when I started out, I was definitely the only woman in the contract negotiations, and I learned very quickly that for me to be taken seriously, I had to be a little louder, and I had to come to terms with that. They're going to walk away and say, "Wow, she was a little louder." Mm-hmm. So there is this idea of, I'm a business person. I do a lot of philanthropic work. So I'm very committed to the community. But in this situation, we are talking about being a successful, profitable business so that my employees and I can have the best life possible. And that means that I'm going to have to be a little louder than the next person. So I hear the feedback. I own the feedback. I acknowledge the feedback, but I'm not always going to change to it.
Thank you so much for sharing that, because I think that's something a lot of us face of. It's sort of like these different roles we have to play depending on the circumstance. There's sometimes when you need to be more forward, sometimes when you may need to pull back, and depending on your personality, that may be easier or harder for people at different stages. So it's great to hear from you, someone who's had a business you've had your business balancing life's issues for 20 years almost?
Yeah, or no more, actually. It's going to be close to 30.
Close to 30. So you've been through it a little bit. You speak from experience. So
I do.
I appreciate you sharing that.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. So let's speak about your business, Balancing Life's Issues. As you mentioned, when you started it or first began thinking about it, you were going through a divorce and balancing raising your 3 children as a single mom at that time. Tell us about that moment and how you found balance in that moment and why this idea for creating it as a business came to you.
There was already wonderful work being done, and certainly employee assistance programs, which we partner with all the time, had this idea that people need help. And so it was a world that existed vastly different than it does today, but there was certainly a world that existed for employees to get help. And I love that world, and I helped expand it to include everything. So when I started, there were 5 topics, right? Stress management, overcoming burnout, time management, planning and prioritizing. Those were the basic courses.
And this was in about the 80s or so?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So the wellness industry did not exist. Mm-hmm. And certainly what we know today, none of the research science existed, right? And I sort of say this tongue in cheek, but it really is the truth. As I started to experience many challenges in life, you do realize that you're never in it alone, right? It's whatever struggle you're going through, someone else is going through it too, right?
Yep.
And so the more personal I got and the more I was willing to share about strategies that made my life better, truthfully, the more successful we became and the more edgy I got. I mean, we're very proud of the fact that I was teaching gay, lesbian support groups in corporate America 25 years ago. Mm-hmm. We were doing transgender classes 20 years ago. And awesome. So our premise, is if people are having an issue or a concern or worry, it is probably detracting them from being as productive as they can be at work.
Now, sorry, go ahead.
No, we're willing to go way out there. So we started with 5 classes. We're now at over 300 classes, and we facilitate about 15,000 trainings a year.
Wow, that's amazing. Now you're in 30 states at this point, right?
We're in all the states, and actually we're global now. We're in Mexico and Canada. We've done some work overseas in Europe and in India.
And it's you, and you have trainers in all of these different places that go and teach your content based on your strategies.
Yes.
Excellent.
So we have a mission statement that we are committed to engaging educational seminars that inspire individuals to change their lives. So whatever the topic would be, if it's to talk about divorce, if it's to talk about financial wellness, if it's to talk about dieting, if it's to talk about relationships, communication, whatever it is, we have a program that gives skill sets on different tools to help people be more productive.
Now, as you mentioned in the beginning of the business, you were a school teacher at that time. When did you decide that that this was the thing, this was the business that you were going to go after at that time? I assume you were looking or feeling out what you wanted to do.
Well, I had 3 little kids and no husband. My husband had left and very little of the house. We were in a major house renovation. And so being a teacher means a very expensive daycare bill. And I would be working just to pay a daycare, so that didn't really make sense to me. I got my first job through an EAP, an employee assistance program, and I could not believe that someone paid me to talk to them. I thought that was the most awesome thing in the world. And it was about parenting, which was a very good topic. I do a lot of parent work. I'm a parent educator. And so people really, you could feel the connection. I happen to believe that, and we're living in such a crisis. I was lucky because this is really pre-Facebook, right? So now when you look at Facebook, everybody's lives look perfect. I think it's even more important what we do now because it's so difficult to discern that there really are hard issues today. We are the most divided country that I've ever felt in all my years of working. And the answer is not to not talk about things. The answer is to talk more about things.
Right. How do you think social media has affected us, whether it's in the corporate world or otherwise?
It's just fake. It's the reality is it's fake.
I say it's a highlight reel of everybody's life.
And you know, I can tell you that I look at it. I'm tough. I mean, I've gotten rejected so many times. I'm divorced twice. I've fallen down so many times. My parents have been in a car accident. I mean, I've been through, just like everyone else, many struggles. And I know that feeling of getting up. But, when you click on Facebook and you see everybody's perfect marriage and everybody's perfect children and everybody's perfect everything, it makes everything that you're going through that much harder, in my opinion. So learning how to have that ability to say, here's my good, bad, ugly is even more important. And learning how to say to someone, you know what, you're offending me. I don't like that. I want to work on this. I'm all about healthy conflict.
Healthy conflict.
I actually like fighting. I think fighting is awesome.
Why do you like fighting?
How am I going to get to know you? If I wanted to get to know you on a personal level and you only tell me Elayne's best parts.
Right.
How are we ever really going to know each other?
You have to get down to the gritty parts, I always say.
Yeah.
Right. Now, how do you help employees or people that you train handle conflict, or how do you discuss conflict with them?
It's really empowering people to either learn how to be a better communicator, right? How to fight fairly, where can not go. But I actually think it goes deeper than that. I think it's about a confidence that they have a right to have an opinion. They have a right to have a feeling. And so, one of the things I'm fascinated with is self-confidence. And, think about it. I mean, Elayne, have you ever taken a class in self-confidence?
A class in No, I haven't.
So why would we think we would be good at that?
Right.
And of course, along the way, add to it gender, race, religion, age, and you start to realize how difficult it is. Maybe if we were a white man, our self-confidence would be easier to understand or feel because we have so many role models. We turn on every television show, and up until recently, every president fell into that. And so, to me, it's self-confidence as a woman becomes more challenging. People often say, I happen to be really pretty short. I'm 5'1.5", maybe. Scout that.
We'll give you the half.
I'm always surprised that my one of the first things people will say is, "Oh, you're short." And I'm like, wow, that's just such a visual image of what they think of me, right? Mm-hmm. So color is, we have an unconscious bias that kicks in.
Right.
And so I want to empower people to talk about that unconscious bias so we can get to a different level.
And I would imagine that would help in the working environment, especially knowing where to go and where not to go. And like you said, how to handle those conflicts.
And while I know we live in a very politically correct world, and I certainly want people to be diplomatic, I do fervently believe that anyone should be able to talk to anybody about anything. Mm-hmm. We just need the skill sets to do that. I should be able to ask you any question in the goodness of my heart, where I want to be a better person. I want to work better on the team. I want to understand something. Maybe it didn't come out right, but you're going to give me the benefit of the doubt to move us to a better place.
And be able to, and feel empowered. If you were asking me on my part, I should feel empowered to be able to say, like you said, hey, that could be offensive, or that could be taken this way, or, you know what I mean? Like you said, that communication is the thing that moves us all forward.
Absolutely.
I'm with you. Now, I have to ask you, your company, Balancing Life's Issues, you've been doing it for almost 30 years. I know you know there's a big debate among people, especially among a lot of women, at least the ones I know, of whether work-life balance is truly possible. Is there such a thing? I got to ask the expert.
Yeah, you do. So I wrote my dissertation on this. So I've certainly been lucky enough to talk on it in Washington and all over the world.
Okay.
I mean, we know it's obtainable. I mean, we absolutely know that there are people in the world that are so contented with their choices. And that's what work-life balance means. They mean they haven't sacrificed, we call it our 5 buckets. They have 5 buckets, and they understand that you need all 5 to be happy and healthy, right? You've got to have people in your life. I mean, babies that are born premature, they die. It's called failure to thrive. We're human beings. We need people in our lives. So it means I have to get out and date. I mean, do you really think I want to get out and date at 55 years old? No. Mm-hmm. But I understand the value of having a support group. And actually, in today's paper was just a fascinating article that we're in more crisis for friends than ever. So we collect Facebook friends, which are fake, but we actually have less
real friends.
Yes, which
right.
I think is, I mean, that's so fascinating to me. So we need to have financial wellness. We need to be in control of our money. And, you know, if I take a group of women, I mean, I think we know we've moved the needle very little. We're still living in a pretty traditional world where women are not controlling their finances as much as we would like. So we have to have money, we have to have family and friends, we have to have health. We really need to be in control of how well we sleep, our weight, our exercise. We need to be in charge of our work life. And even for those who want to and choose to stay at home, mom and dads that choose to be stay-at-home mom and dads, we need intellectual stimulation. Mm-hmm. And the last bucket, which is fascinating, which got validated just this year by the Journal of American Medical Association, is we need to matter. So whatever you call the last bucket, I don't care if you call it spirituality or community or giving back or being a good person, you can fill in the blank whatever you want. We need to matter in this world.
And feel significant, as Tony Robbins say.
Yes.
Absolutely. Now, why do you think so many of us as women entrepreneurs especially think that balance is elusive? It's just something we can't obtain.
Because it's hard. And
why is it hard?
Well, because first of all, we have, let's talk some real messages. The first thing is directing it to women. We have a biological clock. And so we've done a lot of studies on this, and people have thought, okay, when I have the money and when I have the job and then when I have the right partner, then I'm going to be ready to have children. And I can't tell you how many people I've met that live in that world, and they wake up and they unfortunately can't have it. It's too late. They've had fertility issues. Adoption is very difficult today. People don't really understand that. So they've made it. They made a linear decision to prioritize the wrong things, and it is too late. So those people will never feel like work-life balance can be obtained because they've made some really hard, probably not the best choices. And believe me, I'm very well aware of what I'm saying. Mm-hmm. I've been doing it a long time. There are decisions that we make in our life that can never be made right.
And how do we come to terms with that?
We acknowledge it. And there, you know, the fact is, I mean, we hopefully can mentor younger people like my daughter and my sons to think about it in a different way. And we can start, you know, sharing that message. You know, the example I use is, would you rather lose 5 pounds or 100 pounds? I mean, it's a stupid question, but you know how easy it is to lose 5. If we stopped at 5, we'd all be fine. It's when we get to the 100 pounds that we start having to talk about gastric bypass and lap surgery, you know, laparoscopic surgery and all kinds of, you know, very challenging things. And so the first thing is to understand that we have to really do very real self-searching about what we want from life. And what's great about my field now is the research science is behind us. So, you know, we have new books. I'm just finishing Dalai Lama's and Archbishop Desmond Tutu's book about joy. And research science shows, the neuroscientists now show where joy lives in our brain. What do we need to feel joy? We need human compassion. So we need to be compassionate for ourselves. When we've messed up, I mean, I hate the fact that I'm divorced twice. You know, that's not something I wear on a banner and say, yay, that's great, Wendy. Mm-hmm. But it's part of a journey to understand our flaws. Maybe I made a decision and I should have had kids and I didn't. I'm going to give myself a break and I'm going to volunteer and help orphan kids. There's always a world that we can be of use in some other way.
I love that idea that, like you said, there's always a way or a way that we can be of use as opposed to just beating ourselves up for the rest of our life because we made a certain decision.
Absolutely.
Now, you've worked with companies like IBM, Chase, Citigroup, and Donna Karan, so many others. That's just a few over the past 30 years. When you go into companies as a trainer, though, or you or your staff, what are you teaching employees exactly?
So because we do very short, between 1 and 3 hours, we really try to be laser focused. So if it's something, going to the 300 topics, so maybe it'll be a topic about knowing your FICO score, or maybe it'll be a topic about how to parent your children through with social media. So, I'm just picking, resiliency is our top seller. Laughter is a big seller. I'm thinking about some of our best sellers. So we try to be very laser focused, and we really make sure that we leave the attendees with one or two, that's it, one or two things that they're going to try, that they're going to implement differently. So they're very skill-based class.
So when you are pitching you may not have to pitch anymore. I know you have such great relationships, but when in the beginning, you always pitch. Always in pitch mode. Got it. But when you do approach a company or talk to a company, do you come to them with the idea for what kind of workshop you'd like to teach their employees, or do you kind of say, this is what we offer and have them choose for that? And I'm asking for those entrepreneurs who are listening who might be interested in corporate training in some way.
Yeah, I think there's a little bit of both. Sometimes the clients know better. Mm-hmm. Sometimes they will always say, like, we know we need this, right? And so we'll go with that. And sometimes we'll say, you know what, maybe you want to look at our best sellers. And we know that they're best sellers for a reason, right? We know that sometimes our personal budgeting class, everybody can use the personal budgeting class. Everybody can use eating for high energy class. So sometimes we'll say to them, you may not think that you want this, but let's try it.
Tell me about the one about laughter. You said that's one of your best sellers, and I saw a video of you talking about that, and I was very intrigued. Yeah, and
I have to say it's very validating because in this book I'm reading, they have this best friend relationship, which is kind of a little unusual, right? Totally different faiths and different cultures and everything, and what brings them together is laughter, and they are very funny together. This the Dalai Lama and Archbishop Tutu. But laughter's been around. Charlie Chaplin coined the phrase "take the pain and play with it," and I certainly learned it when I was working with the widows of September 11th. I remember doing some work with them, and one of the women saying, "I don't want to feel sad anymore. I'm tired of feeling sad." And we started to compile stories about funny things that their husbands had done. And we asked colleagues and coworkers and survivors to collect books. Katie Couric did this when her husband died. And it really sort of set me on this path to understand when you look back on your life and you look back on what you're looking for, you want more laughter, you want more fun. And it doesn't just happen. You have to make it happen. When my dad was dying, I took off time to be with him. He was my very best friend in the world. And it was so sad. And I would walk in the morning and there's this incredible sadness of grief that unfortunately too many of us know. And we used to just sit and watch these YouTube videos of babies laughing. Mm-hmm. And then we would just literally retell every funny vacation we've ever been on. And I know this sounds so an odd thing to say, but his hospice time became some of my favorite memories ever. It was reliving all the life that we had in our relationship. And so it's a conscious decision every day to do something fun. It's a conscious decision not to take things that seriously. Mm-hmm. And it's a conscious decision to actually add laughter to your to-do list.
Oh, I love that, Wendy. Add laughter to your to-do list. I might have to put that on my vision board. I'll give you credit.
You have awesome smiles, so I can imagine.
Thank you. I love to laugh. I come from a family that sometimes probably laughs inappropriately, but laughter is just healing for so many of us in so many ways. And just like I said, hearing you saying it, watching the video, I was very drawn to that because it just resonated as true. And now there's science and all kinds of things to back it up.
Yep.
Absolutely. Now, one of the areas of expertise for you also is emotional intelligence. That's something I'm a big proponent of, and I've spoken to other guests about it as well. But tell us why emotional intelligence is important, and how does that relate to us finding balance?
It's interesting because, some of these things make so much sense they just make sense. But now, again, we have more proof. So the idea behind the real hypothesis of EQ or EI, whatever you want to call it, emotional intelligence was, one would think that all the valedictorians of the Harvards and the Yales and Stanford and these great schools would be successful. I mean, that it would seem to make sense that if you were smart enough to get into that college and smart enough to graduate on the top, it would mean you're set for life. And when they did the research, they found that really wasn't necessarily true. We have very successful Mark Zuckerbergs of the world who actually dropped out of these schools and certainly became very successful. So that put the business world in a quandary. It really is it's just an interesting premise because as a mom, I see it with my kids. My older son is in medical school, and you look at like what you want from that relationship. And what you want from that relationship is to understand why someone does something, how they feel about something. And that's really ultimately what we're motivated by. And that would, go back to the healthy conflict thing. I mean, now you're in my soapbox is if I can understand why you're saying something, and use the idea of someone saying something offensive. Usually it comes from fear. We're scared of something we don't know. Mm-hmm. We're not really a bad person. We're just really scared.
Right.
So if I came to you instead of saying something offensive and said, well, actually, I'm scared that you're a woman or scared that you're whatever, you'd say, wow, I'd have a different conversation. So, if you stop during the day, and I do this frequently, and acknowledge how you're feeling, I mean, I wish we were in a world that we were able to share that more openly, and I certainly hope we get there. But I can tell you, I've gone into meetings in Fortune 50 companies on very, very, very big contract days, and I feel like I'm about to throw up. I mean, I'm so anxious and so nervous. And the first thing I do is I just own that. I'm so excited to be here, but I'm really nervous. I'm really anxious. And that's the way I slam dunk it. It's honest integrity about how you're feeling, doing the work beforehand to say, here's how I'm really feeling, and I'm going to be willing to share that.
That is so interesting because I think some people might think I can't let them know that I'm nervous, right? This whole never let them see you sweat kind of thing, as opposed to, as you said, acknowledging it, putting it out there, and then moving beyond it.
So let me interrupt you for a second. So what you're talking about is suppression of emotions. And that's why work-life balance is so difficult. That sounds great. So just play with me for a second, Elayne. Yeah. Go ahead. Ask me how I am.
Wendy, how are you?
Fine. I'm in a good mood.
Which is what we all say.
Right. So we are leaking emotions every second of every minute. So this idea of sucking it up, it just doesn't exist. And if it did exist, it's going to take such a toll on your health. It's going to drive you to drink or overeat or even overexercise. By the way, there's all these studies about positive addictions. We can get addicted to good things or bad things.
That's a good point. People addicted to working out.
So, we can get so turned on by a great conversation. And this starts very early. I mean, actually, I work with pediatricians who think it happens in utero, which is so interesting because just think about it, in Korea, often they'll say you're born and you're already one because they count the time that you're in a mother's womb. But whether you do or not, it doesn't matter. The fact is, very little children, if you saw the news today about the terrible thing that happened to the toddlers, the twins.
No, I didn't see it.
Oh, well, a chest fell on the twin, and the 2-year-old twin was able to literally move a 100-pound piece of furniture off his twin brother.
Wow.
And they brought in all these doctors that talked about the adrenaline rush and what fear can do. But kids know, they literally leak emotions. We teach them to stop doing it. It's very sad.
Right. Especially, well, I would say boys and girls, but I know I've even talked to friends who have young sons and the whole thing, be a big boy, don't cry, boys don't cry. And then I said, but then when he gets older, there's going to be a woman or man, any other partner, wanting him to show emotion, and he's not going to know how because you've been telling him his whole life to suppress it. So, as you said, it's sort of a different understanding for all of us, especially with dealing with children and with ourselves.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, it's a, in that way, maybe we can praise social media in the sense that we have emojis, we can sort of put out there like maybe more honest emojis and say, I really am feeling anxious, scared, fearful, nervous, lonely. I mean, despondent. I mean, people used to say to me, I was sad when my father died and it made me angry. And I was like, I'm not sad, I'm despondent. There's a big difference between sad and despondent. So, when I teach the class, I tell people, Truth be told, I like to have a glass of wine once in a while. Mm-hmm. I don't know about you, Elayne. Do you ever go for a glass of wine?
Yes, I do. A good Riesling.
So there you go. If you walk into a wine store and you say, I just want a bottle of wine, what's the wine guy going to ask you?
What kind? Or what do you like?
What kind? And the more you get it right, the more likely you end up with the wine that you like.
Right.
Emotions are just like that. The more that you're able to say, this is how I feel, the more the world opens up. So, knowing the difference between fear and anxiety and scared and angry, or overwhelmed. I mean, those are 5 emotions that we confuse all the time. They're totally different.
How do we tap into, other than taking one of your courses, which I would love to do, how do we tap into knowing which emotion we're experiencing at that time? Is it a matter of being still for a second and becoming more self-aware?
Yeah, I mean, one of the newest trends that's really hit corporate America last year, and we're going to see more and more, is mindfulness, right? The idea of paying attention. So, some people will be listening to the interview, and I would challenge them to say, can they just sit and listen to this interview? And I do think in today's world, it's very challenging. You know what I did over the holiday break? I got a record player. And I got a record player because I have all my albums when I was little.
Oh.
And I sat and listened to my albums. And in the olden days, they had the words written and you would do one thing. You would listen to a song and you didn't do anything else.
Right.
And so I was telling my kids the reason is, first of all, we only had 3 TV stations. Well, that got boring. There wasn't very much to pick from.
Right.
So we listened to music. We didn't do anything. We didn't multitask. We literally just focused on what the song was saying, how it was making you feel. And I think that is a perfect definition of mindfulness. I'm going to make a decision to listen to this interview right now and not do anything else. And I would challenge your audience to say, how many of them have made it through these few minutes and not checked their email, not done it and eaten while they're listening to this, and literally focus on the experience of what we're saying?
That is so good. I actually am thinking about myself even when I listen to podcasts or do things, it's always one thing and another thing added on to it. And then I might catch myself in a moment where I have to go back and say, wait, what did they say? I really want to hear that, because I'm thinking I'm doing both and balancing, quote unquote, balancing both. But really multitasking, people say now, isn't really a thing.
It's exhausting. I mean, look,
Right.
Corporate America certainly is multitasking, but you have to acknowledge it. It's exhausting. It's
Right.
exhausting. And so we have to do it for a certain extent, but we certainly don't have to do it when you go out with your significant other or when you're with your children or when you're trying to be personal development. If you're sitting here saying, I want more from life. Mm-hmm. I think it's interesting because they interview people about certainly mindful eating. I used to be very heavy. I'm always watching my weight. And one of the things you learn is to chew your food. I mean, you're supposed to chew your food like 17 times. Have you ever eaten a meal and you don't even remember what you've eaten?
Yes. Or if you've eaten.
Right.
It's like, did I have lunch today? I don't remember. Right. Because you weren't
so
really
you can
present.
Imagine.
Yeah.
I mean, people say this to me all the times about their kids. Like, well, their kids grew up and they missed it. I mean, that's your fault. There are things in life that we have to own that we need to do differently. And it's just like anything. To a certain extent, you've got to get on the scale. You've got to weigh yourself. You've got to look at, what you can do. You've got to make a plan. Great time to do this at the beginning of the new year. I'm all about resolutions. And actually, resolutions are when we do resolutions right, they're very successful.
How do you do resolutions right?
You make them very tough. You make them very, very, very tough. You set the bar way higher. Entrepreneurs, I give you an example. I'm a big LinkedIn fan. I'm a huge fan of LinkedIn. I do it 4 or 5 times a day. I have it on my phone. First thing I do. Sorry?
I'm sorry. I was just going to say, when you say do it 4 times a day, you mean checking or posting or?
Any of those, but certainly networking. So, who do I want to meet? What's my ideal client? Who do I want to meet and how am I going to get there? It took me 10 years on LinkedIn to get one of my biggest clients.
Wow. And what was that, by just outreach or what?
It was. I knew I needed to meet a senior vice president, and that's tough. I mean, it's tough to meet someone at that level. So it's going to be years and years of introductions of people, of plotting first, second, third. How am I going to meet someone? I'm doing that now with a client. I don't expect it to change tomorrow. I'm in this for the long haul.
And was
so
that
LinkedIn to me is amazing.
And that was one of your resolutions?
Yep. And I've been doing that actually for about a year, but I continue it. So resolutions don't always have to be new. Also, people can say, you know what, I've been doing this well. I want to continue this good behavior.
That's a good point. It doesn't have to always be starting something new. I think that might be sometimes what throws some people off is it's all about what's new as opposed to, looking at what's working.
Right.
Yes. And I think to go back to your point about emotion, something that I've been processing lately is this idea of, like you said, being present or conscious of what emotion you're feeling, but then asking myself why I'm feeling it. Do you find that that's something that you would advise is helpful? Because I think when I get to the why of why I'm feeling it, which I feel like we sometimes stay away from, it's just I'm sad or I'm angry or I'm jealous or whatever, but it's why am I feeling this way? I feel like I can talk myself through it when I process that.
And then I would continue the conversation and say, and what do I really want to feel?
And what do I really want to feel? I'll add that. That's great.
I mean, you get to change that. You get to change, it's interesting because, we get to change our emotions in a nanosecond. So if you don't want to feel sad and you want to feel happy or you want to feel joyous or you want to feel excited, how are you going to get there? Right.
And the first thing I think for me is thinking about, like you said, what do I want to feel? And then how do I get there?
If I walk into a very often a coffee store, it smells of coffee. What do you think? Is that real or fake?
The smell of coffee? I think it's real.
Most of the time it's fake. It's piped into the air conditioning vent. It's called leveraging your emotions. If you smell coffee, you want coffee. So if you came into my office, it's a little shrinish. I got tons of stuff about my dad from his office. I love it. It makes me happy. I have my Canadian Rockies trip. When I first got divorced, I wanted to do something really challenging. So I climbed many of the Canadian Rockies. And I have a map. And so I leverage my emotions by having things around me that help me feel whatever I want to feel. Maybe it's proud, maybe it's joy, maybe it's serenity, whatever it would be.
Leverage your emotions. And that's by surrounding yourself with those things that make you feel what you want to feel.
Sure. I'm looking at you in a powerful red dress. You're a stunning woman.
Oh, thank you.
That red dress must make you feel very powerful.
Yes, I love red.
Yeah, and it looks great with your skin tone. You have gorgeous earrings, gorgeous cheekbones, and you want to wear something that's going to show that off. That's exactly what you want to do.
Mm-hmm. Leveraging it. I love it. That's wonderful. Now I have new feelings for that dress. Now, Wendy, what would you say are your top 3 tips for finding balance or managing stress? I know you have tons of great advice and information on it, but if you had to give us 3, especially for going into this new year now.
Yes, I would say set the bar higher than you are. Try much harder. Really, if you're not failing at least 90% of the time, you're not trying hard enough. Mm-hmm. So surround yourself with that. Second, I would say people are often surprised when I say this. I'm very selfish. I even as a mom, I come first. I'm happy because I take care of Wendy. I am very conscious to put myself first. Mm-hmm. And the third one is be honest. And to a level that we're not quite there yet. I'm hoping 2017 is going to be a year about this. But I would say we really need to own what we're feeling and what we're struggling with. So we have to be able to be honest with ourselves. So they go together. I mean, the 3 do go together, right? Because if you're honest about something, you're also going to be willing to say, I may not be successful at this, but man, I'm going to try harder than I ever thought. Truthfully, I will say many entrepreneurs think they work very hard, and they qualify that by long hours. Mm-hmm. I'm not about that. I mean, we have a magic number. Studies have shown anything over 50 to 53 hours a week, you're probably not doing anything good. You're probably just spinning your wheels in mud. You're not working harder. Right. But you do need to, I take tons of risks. Tons of risks. Oh my gosh.
What kind of risk? What's one of your biggest risks lately that you can share with us?
I recently bought into something called JetSmarter. I'll give them a plug here. It's like a Uber for planes, and it's enabled me to travel and meet people and explore different places for me to grow the business. And I had a short window to buy it, to turn it over. It was a big decision. It was financially, I don't know.
Right.
And, what I've learned as an entrepreneur, you can't overthink something. You really have to sometimes just jump in the pool. So those are risks that you're not sure they're going to work. You're not positive how it's going to be, but you have an idea that it might help you get to the next level. So I would say sometimes it's financial risk, but I would also say and people think it's because I'm extroverted, but that is so not true. I mean, I will walk up to people on a cafeteria line with my business card and say, here's what I do. Here's my 30-second pitch. Do you know someone who might be able to use my services?
Have you always been able to do that, or was that something that you had to talk yourself sort of into? I
don't think anybody's born feeling. I really would argue that somebody says they're born. That I'm probably out of Myers-Briggs very extroverted, so maybe it's a little bit easier for me. But I got to be very clear: it doesn't feel good ever, and you never get good at it. And after I do it, I'm zapped of all my energy. I literally can tell you how scared I am.
Right. Thank you for saying that, because I think it, just as you said, sometimes people think, oh, well, that it's either we use it as an excuse. Oh, that person was born that way, so it's easy for them to do that.
Yeah, I don't know anyone who's going to be honest with you to say it was easy to go up for an ask. It's never easy to get rejected. It's never easy to put yourself out there. But it's part of a package to say, you know what, I'm gonna really look at perseverance, determination, and tenacity. Those are the only 3 skills you need. The rest, you got those. The sky is your limit.
Mm-hmm. Now, one of the things you posted about recently on Facebook, speaking of social media, was a great article from the New York Times called "Let 2017 Be the Year of Working Hard and Resting Hard."
Yeah.
So I wanted to ask you, why do we underestimate rest as a tool for success? And is the age of crushing it, quote unquote, crushing it over?
Yeah, I definitely hope and feel the age of crushing is over. We just neurologically we know so much more research about our brains. And so we know that exhausted is where mistakes happen. And when I talk about mistakes, one of the things I want to be clear is that you can make a mistake in a relationship. I'm divorced, and it can be irreconcilable. And so, it's really important to understand that rest is what enables us to be creative. So if you use an example of exercise, the highest exercise is to exercise with nothing.
What do you mean exercise?
So you don't put music on, you don't put an iPad, you don't listen to podcasts. You literally listen to yourself. That's what we mean by rest. When's the last time you sat in a chair for 20 minutes and did nothing?
Right. Well, I've just started doing meditation since last year, so I've been doing 10 minutes every day, and it has been a game changer.
Yep. And the Dalai Lama does 6 hours a day.
I know. It's amazing.
Gets up at 3 o'clock in the morning to do it.
That's amazing. I can't imagine how centered that would make you. But that's the thing, too. A lot of us use this excuse of not having enough time or feeling like we don't have enough time. And I know that's something you've talked about, too.
It's, and the thing is, if you do the math, it's like anything, right? If you're trying to lose weight, you write down all the calories you eat, and you realize you eat way more than you thought. We get 168 hours a week. We have so much time in our days. We waste so much time. Right. I mean, the average American wastes 2.1 hours a day in unnecessary conversations. I mean, just in literally not being skill set to say, you know what, Elayne, I'm sorry, have a great day, or not even I'm sorry, you know what, I've got to get this work done. I mean, we have to be empowered to put our time, be good time managers. So I am an excellent time manager. I can honestly say that is one of the skill sets. I've never been late to anything. I just unfortunately had to let a trainer go this morning who was late to a session. And we don't live in a world like that. We live with traffic. We live with stuff happens. You have to account for that. So the idea that you don't have enough time is a convenient excuse.
A convenient excuse. Now, what would you say entrepreneurship has taught you about yourself as a woman?
That's a really good question. Wow. I think on the good side of it is it's taught me how an amazing world we live in. And I say that really realizing that comes across as a little cheesy, but we hear about an American dream all the time, and I am so grateful for an opportunity to live in a world that has let me raise 3 children, be an incredible daughter, and really be committed to a mission statement and help my entire group that work for me get that message out. So it's taught me what an amazing world we live in. And I say that because really, unfortunately, if you turn the news on, you don't hear amazing stories all the time. You hear very sad stories.
Right.
So it balances me to remind myself of how amazing this world is.
Excellent. So in closing, if you think over your life and career and you had the chance to thank only one person whose support was critical to you personally or professionally, who would that be and what would you say?
So I hope my mom doesn't listen to this, but I think she would agree. I have to pick my dad. You know, I tell a story about my dad that really shows how lucky I was to have him. When I got divorced, I very much wanted him to give me some money. I was a single mom. I was starting out. I had no money. And, you know, I was really struggling. And when he came over, he offered me something much more important. He offered me support and belief. And not a penny. And I have to tell you, we never talked about it until he was really dying. And when he was dying, I said, you know, you could have given me a little money here along the way, Dad. And I think those of us as parents would realize, you know, how hard it is to not help your children when you can. And he said something to me. He said, you know, if I'd given you money, what would you have done? I would never have started my company. I would have spent the money and I would have lived on that money and come back to him for more money. And so to have someone in your life that believes in you so strongly, that is such a core belief that you're going to be successful, you know, that's what we need, but that's what also we need to provide. We need to be that person that in this terrible age where everybody's so negative, we're that person that says, you got this. Mm-hmm. You're going to make this.
And I believe in you.
Yeah, and I believe in you.
Excellent. Wendy, thank you so much for sharing that. Now, tell us how we can support you. What can we do? Tell everyone your website and social media. I'll have a link to everything, but just so people listening, I know they'll want to get in touch with you.
I appreciate it. So our website is www.balancinglifesissues.com. And I'd love it if you liked us on Facebook. We're balancinglifesissues.com. And Wendy Wollner is the Twitter name and the Facebook name. And I really enjoyed our conversation. And I want to thank you for the work that you're doing, the services that you're providing all of us to be more successful.
Thank you so much. Now, before you go, you gave us tons of great advice. But what's your last parting piece of advice to our listeners about anything?
I would really have to say to be a little bit more selfish, have a little bit more fun, and laugh a lot more.
Excellent. Wendy, hold on just a second. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed this episode with Wendy. So now be sure to go to supportissexypodcast.com, search Wendy, and you'll see her show notes page with all of the resources she mentioned there, as well as ways to get in touch with her and follow Balancing Life's Issues. They have great information on their social media platforms. And in fact, since we talked about feedback, I would love to hear from you guys on social media. Mention @supportissexy or mention @Elayne Fluker, and be sure to tell me what you think of this episode, the podcast, anything you want to share, any of the gems you're getting, anything that we can do better. Feedback is information. I would so appreciate it. So again, thank you so much for listening. And now you know what to do. Go out there and create something sexy. And I'll talk to you soon. Take care.